is because this is where, oh my goodness, boys. Yep, I don't. What is up, everybody? Today is an exciting day because we are going to be, first of all, fixing a leak in Greta's power steering, and also we'll be replacing her steering rack because that's where the leak is coming from. All that in today's episode. My name is Ryan. This is Project Race Car. Let's get into it. So since the car is leaking power steering fluid, it's not a good leak to have because it is a very oily liquid. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring Greta outside to hose off some of the underbody of the car so that we can have a clean surface to be working on and hopefully minimize the dust and dirt under there. As well as clean up some of the oil. The steering rack that we're going to be using is a Z3 steering rack, which is a very common upgrade for the E30. The steering wheel lock to lock is 4 turns, so you have to turn it from lock to lock. You have to turn it 4 times, 4 rotations, and the Z3 one is a big upgrade because it is only 2.7 turns, I believe. So it's almost cutting it in half, and it should be a massive upgrade for the E30. But I got some engine degreaser here, so we're just going to spray as much down as we can on the underside and on the skid plate and just try to clean it off. So if you guys can see down there, Greta is pretty crusty, and so we're just going to be trying to clean all that off, and we'll just hit a couple spots and get underneath the car and spray that down. While we're out here, we might as well spray the rims down because they get a little bit dirty. Get those nice and clean. Now you guys can see from one of my last videos just how the water beads up on them. This is from the ceramic coating, so they spray off and clean really nice and easily. Again, see all that dirt and brake dust just sprays off. And most of it's all gone. So what the plan is for right now is we're going to jack up the car, put jack stands underneath it, and there's a couple things that we need to change with the actual steering rack because the on the E30 the high pressure and low pressure lines are on this side. We'll have to bend our current lines that are in the E30 to fit on these. And then what we're also going to have to do is we're going to have to swap out the tie rod, the inner tie rod that is on the car now. And then we will have to, since this is an airbag version, the power steering rack is a little bit different, and we will have to cut a hole in the firewall to fit this shaft in. We're going to start with jacking up the car, and then we will look at getting the old rack out. And what you'll also need is you will also need these 14mm spacers. I got mine from Garagistics. We'll get the old rack out and this new one kind of fit up, and we'll take a look at both of them. Alright guys, so it is very hot out here. I think it's 94 degrees. I know that there's many places that are hotter, but we got the E30 up in the air, and always give it a good wiggle before you ever get underneath the car. I always like to put the Jack, after it's on jack stands, put the jack underneath it just for extra assurance. Again, there's nothing worse than the car falling or falling on you. So always good to be extra safe with that. We're gonna take the tires off right now, but we'll get underneath the car and we'll actually take off the skid plate and start looking under there. So after getting the skid plate off and seeing how dirty that is, we can see how oily this is. So I have a good feeling that it's actually, we just saw a drip come from there, but I have a good feeling that it's actually coming from this side of the boot. So we're going to, and it's only zip tied on, which is a little bit worrisome. So I know that these are just boots, but we'll be able to see if, yep, that is exactly. So the power steering is where the leak is coming from. Yeah, so every time I turn the wheel, this would just juice out. Nice, that was a good one. So this is why we're actually replacing the steering rack, is because this is where, oh my goodness, boys. Yep, that I don't think it's supposed to be leaking like that. Nope, for sure not. Well, glad I got this on video. Yeah, boys, I'd say that is a bad steering rack. Yep. Nice. So yeah, so I saw that there was a leak coming from this side of the boot, and then when I actually took the skid plate off, I saw that it was leaking on this side. So again, I'm sure that one of the seals is actually broken in the rack and pinion setup. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take the wheels off so that we can get the inner and outer tie rod off the wheel. And so that we can start disconnecting this bad boy from the chassis. So finding stuff like this is oftentimes bittersweet. I knew that the steering rack needed to be upgraded to the shorter one, like to the shorter gearing ratio. So it's a good thing that I'm actually replacing this, as well as I could have put it off for longer if it wasn't leaking, but this is a severe leak and it was just leaving puddles everywhere and leaking every time I parked it. So I figure that I'll do an upgrade while I actually, need to do the maintenance. So that's sometimes where you can save some of your money when building a project car, is doing the preventative maintenance, but also upgrading it at the same time. But I would need to clean up this mess and then I will get back to it. So I went ahead and got the tires off. Then you want to remove the bolt on top of the inner and outer tie rod. And then what you'll do is you'll grab a little problem solver here and just whack it. And what that's going to do is it's going to loosen it up and we'll get this out. We'll just keep whacking it. So there are a couple places that this steering rack is actually connected. One of them being the bolts that we already removed. This is what really holds it in. And then the steering lines, or the power steering lines, and then the inner and outer tie rod. I sprayed a little bit of PB Blaster to kind of loosen that up. And then the final spot will be connected to the actual steering rack. So what we're going to do now is we're going to remove the lines and drain all of the power steering fluid out of the car. So looking at the actual power steering and where it's actually connected, it's connected to the chassis with these two lines up on the side of the steering spline. So the first bolt is a 19, and if I'm not mistaken, the second bolt is a 22 millimeter. So we're going to unrelease that, and then that's going to let out all of the power steering fluid. So be cautious and ready with a bucket. And then what we'll do is we'll take off the actual steering rack, steering shaft from the steering rack. And then we should be able to almost pull this thing out. So yeah, so we're gonna do that and try not to get too messy. Okay guys, so I'm officially wrestling with all of the old parts. As you can see, I'm losing. It is extremely hot out in the garage, but we have made some good progress. We got the tie rods off of the Z3 rack, and we also got the tie rods off of the old steering rack so that we can measure the new tie rods and get as close of alignment as possible. As you guys can see, the old joints in Greta are real bad. They have a lot of play in them, and so I just decided to replace the tie rods since everything is out right now. So currently I'm just wrestling with the old shaft and trying to get this knuckle off so that I can swap it over to the new rack. So wish me luck. I'm gonna keep going, but we are almost at putting the new shaft in. Okay, so now that we got the tie rods and the boots on and we got everything in place, what we're gonna do, we're gonna wrestle this back in underneath the car, and we'll kind of get everything in place, and then we'll use our Garagistics spacers to put on the top of the actual steering rack. So yeah, so I'm gonna try to do that, wrestle the car, and we will be back. Okay, so the rack is in. We got the spacers in, so it's kind of in place, but we need to do a little bit of modifying. So you can see here where the spindle is, like the splines of the steering rack, and where the actual steering shaft is. So we have to modify our firewall a little bit. And the second thing that we need to do is the stock power steering lines are on this side, but now with the new rack, they're on this side. So we're going to have to make them fit over here. So we might have to do a little bit of bending on the actual pipes, but we'll do that and that'll be easy. So, and then we can kind of fit everything together and really get this thing dialed in so that she can drive to the alignment shop. So for this, we have to modify the firewall a little bit. And what we're gonna do is since I have an airbag version, I have to modify the firewall. And we're going to cut out a little bit right here. And we're going to actually drill through the firewall and make it go down about 1.5 inches down and to the right. So we'll do that, and we'll cut the carpet, and then we'll cut the rubber on the other side, and then we'll be able to drill the hole and then touch it up with a little bit of paint so that it doesn't rust. So on the end of the tie rod, what I realized just now is that the bearing in here turns, and so whenever you're trying to tighten the bolt on here, the bearing will spin in there as well. Hold on. So what you have to do is you have to get a Allen wrench that fits on the top, and then you can get a 15 millimeter and tighten them against each other. So that's how we'll do that, just in case you guys didn't know that. So currently the steering rack is in. It's the shiniest thing inside the car, And we did cut a hole in the firewall, and what I did was I spray painted it for anti-rust. But so I cut it down and to the right, and it's pretty easy. I'm gonna make sure that there's more spray paint down there, but just so that we don't have any rust in the future. And then what I'll do is I will fit the boot. I'll fit the boot on the actual hole, and then we'll go ahead and feed the steering shaft through, and then we can actually link up the steering shaft to the rack. So many steering parts. But yeah, so we're looking good so far. The garage is a mess, but we can always clean it. Okay, so the E30 is on, and I've been bleeding the system, but now we can see how full lock to lock is. So this is full lock. We're gonna do 1 turn, 2 turns, and lock. So it is much better, and we'll have to actually take her out on the road to see how good it actually does. But I'm just checking for leaks right now, and it should be good. All right, everyone. So the steering rack is completely done. Now all we have left to do is put the wheels and tires on, and then put the skid plate on, and then get the car down and take it for a test drive. So the Z3 swap on the airbag version of the car is there's a lot of little pieces to be done and to fit together, but overall it wasn't that difficult to do. With drilling the firewall, it was a little bit new and but it wasn't that difficult to actually do and to complete. But overall, the job took me about 5 hours total of just like full work. So, and it was the first time that I had ever done something like this. So if you can be prepared for it, it's really, really easy. I would for sure recommend this for anybody that needs to do a steering rack swap, because it is a lot cheaper than trying to source a new one for the E30. And it's going to tighten up the steering and make that gearing ratio a lot better. I hope you guys all enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. But until next time, my name is Ryan. This is Project Race Car. Have an amazing day. Peace.